Welcome back to another episode of Before You Buy, the show where we give you some straight-up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. Hi, folks, it's Falcon, and today we're looking at Nightingale, a survival sim from new studio Inflection Games, which was founded by Arian Flynn, a former BioWare executive, and while this game is a major departure from the BioWare style, it's a procedurally generated survival game after all. It does have an unusually deep setting for one of these games, and the presentation, especially in the trailers, make it look a lot more polished and fleshed out than your traditional survival game experience. The premise is one of the more intriguing parts of the game. The setting is an alternative Victorian era where mankind mastered the use of realm gates. I'll let that sink in for a second. Realm gates to different realms. I'm not actually making fun of the concept. It's just really important for the actual setting of the game. Basically, it's Victorian stuff, but you can travel to alternate dimensions. After some kind of cataclysm on Earth, you're stranded in an alternate world, and your ultimate goal is to return to the last human bastion of Nightingale and figure out what the hell is going on. It's a legitimately exciting idea, a survival game that isn't set on one single world, and to the game's credit, the gameplay does support the premise here. What makes this stand out from other survival games are these things called realm cards. Like I said, this is important. You can find them or make them, and they can be used at realm gates to open up a portal to a new dimension. Each portal requires 2 cards, a biome card and a modifier, which affects how the realm's going to appear, what enemies might show up, how difficult it can be, among other things. Each realm is randomly generated, and one thing I really want to give this game credit for is that a lot of the time, these places do not look random at all. Each biome has a lot of visual diversity and geometry to them. They don't just look like a bunch of rolling hills and random points of interest dotted around. At times, this game can look outwardly incredible. When everything's working, the world can be stunning. The game incorporates some cutting-edge Unreal 5 tech like Lumen, and it can be really, really impressive. But there was a key phrase there. I said, when it works. Unfortunately, at least in my experience, this game is plagued with visual glitches, janky animations, immersion-breaking bugs, and annoying stuttering that doesn't go away, no matter how much I adjust the graphic settings. Normally with stuttering like this, I'd blame the performance, and it does seem like this game isn't the most well-optimized, but there's potentially another candidate, lag. Nightingale is an online-only game. Even if you're playing by yourself, it requires an internet connection to work, and it sucks. It's completely unnecessary. Almost every other survival game on the market does fine playing offline, but this one requires you to connect to the server every single time. For me, personally, playing in North America, the only real issue I've had is some persistent stuttering, but just from scanning the Steam reviews, a lot of other folks have suffered much, much worse than this, even. I'm talking about failure to connect, high ping, severe lag, a lot of game-breaking bugs related to always online. It seems to really be a problem, which is unfortunate because there's a lot of things I like about Nightingale. The actual process of building is satisfying and simple. Everything snaps together nicely. It's fairly intuitive. They've added some interesting wrinkles to how crafting works. Personally, I prefer exploring strange alien worlds, so there's only so much standing around crafting random doodads I can stand. But for people who really like that, Nightingale gives you a lot to chew on. For one thing, it gets complicated quick. In just the first few hours, you get like 6 different crafting stations, most of which make material that you need for other crafting benches. There's this whole system where items have different levels of quality, so depending on the type of materials you put into building an item, it determines how effective the item is going to be, blah, blah, blah. Depending on where you build things, your structures get added benefits. Like if you build inside on a foundation, your crafting stations are going to take a lot longer to break down. Build near a fire and they get warm, which can speed up crafting, things like that. In theory, fun premise, but it mostly means you have to build inside and have everything bunched together to get the most benefits. If you're the type of person who likes to build other crafting benches outside, these kinds of negative effects may be more annoying than interesting. On top of that, there's an entire enchantment system where you can add special effects to equipment, so that's a lot of fine-tuning for people who really like to get deep in the weeds with this stuff. For me, my eyes kind of glaze over when I'm looking at the crafting menu, and not just because how clunky the UI can be in general. I just want to use item A to get item B, all right? All this fiddly stuff on top doesn't really appeal to me, but I can see how it might interest somebody who is really into crafting in these games. That said, the game is missing a lot of quality of life details a lot of other survival games have. like being able to craft directly from your storage, but that may be an intentional design choice. I'm not really sure. The UI, not great. Navigating with a mouse, pretty tedious, but trying to do it with a controller, near impossible. Many survival games struggle with controller support, so I'm not going to knock it too harshly for that, but the UI is another story. For the most part, survival games have it figured out. This game, on the other hand, decided, let's reinvent the wheel. And all it does is just make things confusing and awkward. This is something that the developers have already said they're looking at, so I do expect that the clunky UI is going to improve in the future, but right now, it really makes things more difficult than they need to be. Overall, I find the crafting in this game to be functional, but way too grindy for my tastes. And the amount of stuff you have to sit through to build anything at all, it really adds a lot of tedium to the experience, and some people I recognize might prefer this. It's a much more in-depth approach to crafting, but I like this stuff to be as streamlined as possible, so please compare your taste to that as you're making decisions. The randomly generated alien worlds do a lot more for me. It's just fun to wander around, see how weird the local wildlife is, which, by the way, plenty weird. Check out a few points of interest, gather loot. Some of these places have crafting recipes and currency to uncover. They're usually worth checking out, even if I'm not sure how many unique locations are actually in the game. These places, I will say, do start to feel a little samey after a while. I think that's kind of the nature of any game like this, though. But I will say, the biomes aren't very big. They have a few major points of interest, usually some kind of boss enemy and a vendor. The vendor system, kind of weird. You trade them essence, which can get you items to buy recipes, but this currency is incredibly easy to get. You can get enough to clear out a vendor just by running in circles and grabbing plants. Then you convert it into currency in your inventory, and then you're good to go. Everything else takes like a fair amount of effort to get, but the currency is super easy to amass a horde of, and it seems a little off. There are things to fight, but combat isn't really the game's strong suit. There are some interesting enemies. I'm not going to say that there aren't. These giant grasshoppers or golden robots. They add an air of mystery to the realms that you enter, but actually fighting this stuff, it is kind of a brainless activity. Combat feels a little like a slightly improved version of Minecraft. You basically walk up to an enemy and slap them until they're dead. There is a dodge, but it's pretty awkward and it doesn't help a lot. Long-range combat feels better, but not by a large margin. So anemic combat wouldn't normally be a big problem for a survival game because there's usually not much of it. But Nightingale, for whatever reason, throws you into combat encounters pretty frequently. To open realm gates, you got to fight waves of enemies off. To unlock certain card recipes, you got to travel through dungeons filled with enemies, and they end in a boss encounter as well. If you're progressing the main story quest, there's a lot of combat. So, I mean, at least you can get a helper to make it easier. There's NPC survivors around, and if you help them do some basic tasks, in my case, I generally built a camp for them. They'll join you. They're not very smart. You can't really tell them what to do, and they're constantly teleporting around and getting stuck on things, ruining immersion. But they're useful as mules to hold items, and they're also good meat shields in combat encounters. Plus, they'll bring you back to life if you die, and that's crazy handy. The game says that you can order them around, but I couldn't find the options to do that, so I was kind of stuck with a guy who'd walk around and cut down every single tree in sight. Speaking of trees, look at the tree cutting animations. What the hell is going on here? It's trying to be Sons of the Forest, but it's failing bad. It's a big fail. Huge L in terms of these animations. Like, this happens every single time I cut down a tree, and it's laughable. That can't be intentional, right? Fishing, it's equally goofy. A lot of enemies kind of jank around to fight. I don't know. Everything looks really awesome when you're just looking around, but in motion, the game sometimes looks straight up bad. And that includes the times where the shading is just completely broken. And again, if the bugs don't scare you off, the tutorial might be worse. It's supposed to give you like a taste of the adventure and teach you what to do, but it kind of just feels like random busy work. The story's told to you through this guy named Puck, who mostly speaks in riddles and then orders you to do something tedious. There's a lot of buy this to build this, to build this, to build other things style objectives. It's all just sort of tedious and not super engaging. It lacks any sort of natural progress you get in the best survival games, too. So you're not doing all this stuff naturally as part of the main gameplay loop. You're basically just checking off boxes because the game tells you to. Progression through the main quest, it's locked by gear score progress, which is annoyingly restrictive and honestly kind of confusing. There's a door that needs 20 gear score to progress through, but when you go up to it, seemingly nothing happens. So what am I supposed to do? Oh, just walk through the barrier. There's nothing visually to tell you that's even possible. Nobody says something. It looks like a thing you shouldn't be able to walk through. It's electric. Usual video game sign for don't touch, especially if you don't have the item that allows for electricity touching. That's usually how it works in games, right? I mean, that goes from Pikmin to Sonic to Borderlands, okay? But no, you just have to touch this thing to progress. It's just one of the many things I experienced with Nightingale that tells me this is a game that needs some time. There's so much awkwardness that I can't address all of it. It's all over the place. And I know this all sounds negative, and it is. Like, there's a lot of stuff wrong with this game. But there's also a lot to like about Nightingale. The realm-hopping premise, I mean, it is such a good premise. And in all actuality, how it works, also really good. There are also some pretty interesting ideas in the crafting, even if it's a little too grindy and complicated for me. The hardcore crafting enjoyers, I think there's so much for them to bite off and chew here. There's a good skeleton. It's just, this game, it's not even close to done. In terms of mechanics and UI, and there's a lot of stuff that needs to be worked on a lot. Stuff I maybe wouldn't consider polished, but there's definitely also a lot of polish that's necessary here. It's too janky to recommend in its current state. It needed more time in the oven. So a lot of other survival games releasing this year in early access, like, let's just go ahead and say it, Enshrouded, Pal World. Yeah, those are early access games, but like they were released in way better shape than Nightingale. So it's hard to give it a pass based on just simply early access, especially when the developer said they plan on the early access period being about a year. Like, it's possible to turn this around because there's a lot of good stuff. It's just, it's all halfway there, you know? With the bugs, the always online requirement, it's all completely unnecessary. So for now, I'm going to say hold off on Nightingale. They need to do a lot more with it. But like I said, the bones, they're good. So my fingers are crossed for this year-long early access period that they have planned. That's all for today. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. If you like the video, click the button. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe. Don't forget to enable notifications. And as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.